When I first moved out of my parents' house, I thought I'd finally feel like an adult. You know, freedom, late-night snacks, dancing around in pajamas, no one asking when I'd be home. Classic 20-something stuff. But I was also broke. Like, really broke. I had a part-time job at a bookstore and was finishing my last year of college, which meant I couldn't afford a place on my own. So I went the route most of us go. I found a house with 4 other people near campus. It was kind of run down, but cheap. And in this economy? That was all I cared about. The lease was in one of the other roommates' names, Jess, and she seemed cool. She was a grad student, always polite. Then there was Cam, a quiet guy who worked nights and rarely spoke more than a sentence. Another girl named Nina moved in a week after I did, and she was fun, a little too into astrology maybe, but harmless. And then there was Eli. He wasn't there the day I moved in. Jess told me he traveled for work a lot and had weird hours, but that he paid rent on time and mostly kept to himself. Fine by me. I wasn't looking for new best friends, just a roof and maybe some quiet. The room I got was small but cozy. Carpeted floors, a big window, a tiny closet. It felt like mine immediately. I even got a little plant for the windowsill. His name's Hugo. But about 2 weeks after I moved in, little things started shifting. I'd come home from class, and something would feel just slightly off. My pillow would be upside down. The rug would be crooked. Hugo had been watered, even though I'd done it that morning. One time, I came back and my pajama shirt was folded on the bed. Neatly. Like how I never fold it. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was forgetful. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I folded the shirt and forgot. It happens, right? But the thing is, I started testing it. I took photos before I left in the morning. My bed, my books, Hugo. I put a strand of hair on the doorknob just barely, like a trap. It was never there when I got back. Then it got weirder. One night I came home late from work and found my window open. Wide. I never open it, especially not in winter. And there was something else, this smell. Like someone's cologne. Not strong, just faint, like the ghost of someone who'd just left. So I did what any sane person would do. I asked my roommates. Jess looked concerned. Cam shrugged and said maybe I was imagining things. Nina told me Mercury was retrograde and things like this were bound to happen. But when I asked about Eli, they all kind of froze. Jess said Eli was out of town. She didn't know when he'd be back, but he comes and goes. That's all she said. No one else added anything. Like they didn't want to talk about him. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was stress. But last night, something happened that I can't explain away. Not anymore. So last night, I stayed at my boyfriend's place. First time since I moved into the house. He lives about 30 minutes away, and usually I just head back home because I like sleeping in my own bed. But we ended up watching movies until almost 3 a.m., and it was pouring outside, so I crashed there. This morning, I came back early, like 7:30. I hadn't told anyone I'd be gone overnight. My door was still closed, locked just like I left it. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The bed looked slept in. Not like rumpled or wrinkled from tossing pillows around, like someone had climbed in under the covers and laid there. The comforter was pulled back halfway. The sheets were bunched at the bottom like someone's legs had twisted them. And worst of all, there was a long, dark hair on my pillow. My hair is blonde. I just stood there for a solid minute, staring. My stomach turned cold. I backed out of the room and closed the door behind me, heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. My roommates were all either asleep or out. I checked. Cam's car was gone. Jess's door was closed, and I could hear her snoring softly. We share a wall. Nina was downstairs doing yoga, completely unaware of anything. So I checked the house. Nothing seemed broken or missing. The front door was locked, the back door was locked, all the windows shut, except mine. Again. It was open just a crack. And my latch? Bent. Like someone had forced it open with something thin and strong. I should have called the police. I know that now. But at the time, I kept thinking, what if it was just one of them? What if it was Eli? Maybe he lost his key and snuck in through the window? But then why use my room? Why not his own? That's when I finally asked to see Eli's room. I'd never been inside. It's upstairs, opposite end of the hallway. Jess told me months ago that he kept a lock on his door for privacy, and I hadn't thought anything of it. But this morning, after everything, I went upstairs and found the door wide open. Inside? Nothing. Literally nothing. No bed. No desk. No clothes. Just a few boxes in the corner and a completely empty closet. It looked like no one had lived there for months. But he's still paying rent. Or at least, Jess says he is. And suddenly, I have a really bad feeling I haven't been living alone in my room after all. After finding Eli's room completely empty, I couldn't shake the feeling that something seriously wrong was happening here. I started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Eli had never once appeared in the house since I moved in. No sightings. No hellos. Not even a noise behind his door. Jess said he came and went, but I realized no one had ever actually seen him in weeks. Not even Nina, and she was home 24/7. And my room? The things out of place weren't accidents. They were habits, human habits. Someone brushing the comforter a certain way. Turning my lotion bottle so the label faced out. Hugo had been rotated, like someone was checking if he was alive. I needed proof. I couldn't accuse anyone without it. So I did something kind of sketchy. I bought a cheap motion detector camera off Amazon. The kind you can hide in a bookshelf. It took a day to arrive. In the meantime, I acted normal. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just left for class, came home, cooked, chatted, scrolled. All while knowing that someone might be waiting to slip into my room the moment I left. When the camera came, I tucked it behind some books on my top shelf. It pointed straight at the door and part of my bed. I tested it, worked perfectly. Only recorded when there was movement. Then, I set the scene. I made my bed perfectly. Smoothed the comforter. Lined up my shoes. I even sprinkled some flour right by the window, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. I left the house around 6 p.m. and told everyone I had a late-night group project. I didn't. I just went to a cafe and waited. Around 9:30 p.m., I checked the camera app. My breath caught. There was movement. I hit play, and my hands started shaking. Someone opened my door, slowly. They slipped inside, shut it behind them, and stood still for a few seconds. Then they walked over to the bed, sat down, ran a hand across my pillow, picked up my hoodie from the chair and held it to their face. It was a man. I couldn't see his face clearly, he kept it angled down, but I saw dark curly hair, a hoodie, jeans. He walked with this strange familiarity, like he'd done this a dozen times. Then he did something I wasn't ready for. He lay down, pulled the blanket over himself, rolled to his side like he was settling in for the night, like it was his bed. And then, he smiled. I watched the footage, frozen. That smile, it wasn't the kind of smile people give when they're amused or content. It was worse. It looked satisfied. Possessive. Like someone returning to something they believed belonged to them. He didn't just lie there. He looked around the room like he was cataloging it. His eyes landed on Hugo, my little plant, and he actually reached over and touched the leaves. Then he picked up my hairbrush from the desk, ran his fingers through the bristles, set it back down exactly where it was. And then, the scariest part, he took out his phone and snapped a picture of my bed. I nearly dropped my own phone watching it happen. He lay there for almost 20 minutes, just scrolling through his phone, nestled under my blanket like it was his. Then, just as casually as he entered, he got up, straightened the bed slightly, and walked to the window. He opened it, and climbed out. I shot up from my cafe chair so fast that people turned to stare. I gathered my stuff, bolted out the door, and called Jess while speed walking home. She didn't answer. The whole walk back, I was shaking. Every gust of wind made me flinch. I kept picturing that smile over and over. Who was this guy? Eli? Someone else? And why the hell did he know my room well enough to move around it like it was his own? When I got to the house, the lights were off in my room. I unlocked the front door and crept in, listening for movement. Nothing. I ran straight to my room. The window was wide open again. The flower by the window? Smudged footprints. Size 11, maybe 12. Definitely a man's. I closed and locked the window, checked every inch of the room, then grabbed Hugo and my laptop and ran downstairs to Nina's room. I didn't care if it was 11 p.m., I needed someone with me. She opened the door, startled, and I told her everything. I even showed her the video. Her face went pale. And then she said something that stopped me cold. I've seen that guy before, she whispered. But that's not Eli. I stared at Nina, trying to process what she'd just said. She looked genuinely freaked out, eyes darting toward the hallway like someone might be listening. She pulled me into her room, shut the door, and whispered that she'd seen the guy maybe twice, once near the back fence when she was doing laundry, and another time through the upstairs window from across the street when she came home late. Both times, she thought it was weird but didn't say anything because he wasn't doing anything illegal. Just lurking. She assumed it was a friend of Cam's or maybe someone Jess knew. He didn't look homeless. He was clean, well-dressed, but he gave her the creeps. Now that she'd seen the video, she realized it wasn't a one-off. This guy knew exactly what he was doing. And whoever he wasn't Eli. Which raised the next terrifying question, was Eli even real? I barely slept that night. I stayed in Nina's room with a chair against the door while she let me use her laptop to review more footage. I scrubbed through the previous day's motion clips. The guy had been in and out twice, once just before noon, then again around 8 p.m. Same method. Came in through the window. Left without a trace. And the sickest part? He never looked rushed. He moved like someone walking into their own home. By 6 a.m., I had a plan. I went to Jess first. She was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, totally casual. When I confronted her, I didn't lead with accusations. I just asked flat out, have you seen Eli recently? Her mug paused mid-air. Then, slowly, she set it down and said, yeah, last week. Why? I told her someone had been in my room. That I had video proof. That Nina had seen the guy and confirmed it wasn't Eli. Jess didn't ask to see the video. She just got really quiet. Her face didn't look shocked, it looked troubled. Then she said something I'll never forget. That room wasn't supposed to be rented again. I just stared at her. What do you mean? Jess looked around, lowered her voice, and said, the last girl who lived there moved out suddenly. Like, in the middle of the night. Left most of her stuff behind. I felt the blood drain from my face. And she said, someone had been sneaking in through the window too. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Jess kept talking, but her words were coming through like static. My ears were ringing. The last girl in my room, the one before me, left suddenly, without taking her things. And she'd said someone was climbing in through the window? I asked Jess why she never told me that. Why she thought it was okay to rent out that room again without warning anyone. She looked guilty, but also defensive. She said it wasn't like that. That the girl, her name was Maya, had always been a little paranoid. That Maya would complain about footsteps in the hallway at night, lights turning off by themselves, someone touching her stuff. She had this whole theory about being watched, Jess said, eyes avoiding mine. But we never found proof. Not even a fingerprint. No one ever saw anything. The landlord thought she was making it up to break the lease. But now? Now I had proof. On video. I pulled out my phone, showed Jess the footage from the night before. Her face changed the second she saw the man crawl through my window. Her lips parted, eyes glued to the screen. She whispered, that's the guy Maya described. And I swear, for the first time, Jess looked genuinely afraid. I asked her again, who is Eli? Because no one had seen him. His room was empty. She didn't answer right away. Just bit her lip, then finally admitted something that made my skin crawl. There is no Eli. She said she made him up. Back when she first moved in, there were only 3 tenants. Then weird things started happening, small things, like doors unlocked, drawers moved, food missing. She thought it was Cam at first, but he always had an alibi. So she and another roommate, who moved out a year ago, decided to pretend there was a 5th person renting the upstairs room. They even paid the extra rent between them. The logic? If someone was sneaking in, maybe the idea of Eli would scare him off. They put a lock on the door, made noise in there sometimes, even had an Amazon package or 2 delivered under his name. It worked. Or at least, they thought it did. Until Maya moved into my room. Until she started seeing things. Until she ran in the middle of the night and never came back. And now, here I was. Same room. Same window. Same intruder. But this time? I had him on camera. After Jess dropped the bomb that Eli didn't exist, everything started spinning in my head. The fake roommate, the girl who ran, the stranger sneaking in, none of it was random. It was a pattern. A sick, deliberate pattern. And I wasn't about to be the next girl who disappeared without answers. I took the footage, everything I had from the camera, to the police station the next morning. Nina came with me. I don't know if it was for support or because she was scared to stay in the house alone, but either way, I was grateful. The officer at the front desk didn't seem too interested at first, just another college girl hearing noises. But the second I played the clip of the man entering through my window and crawling into my bed, everything changed. He stood up, took my phone, and walked into the back without a word. 5 minutes later, a detective came out and asked me to come in. I sat in a small interview room while they reviewed the footage. The detective, a woman named Ramirez, asked me a bunch of rapid-fire questions. Had I ever met this man? Had anything been stolen? Had he ever touched me or threatened me? I told her no, but explained the other things, the photo of my bed, the brushing of my belongings, the presence of someone who moved through my space like he lived there. She asked for names of everyone in the house. I gave her the list. When I got to Jess and explained the Eli cover story, she just sighed and rubbed her temples. Then she said something that gave me both relief and pure dread. We've seen this guy before. Apparently, there had been other reports, women living alone or in shared housing noticing signs of someone entering through windows. Always ground floors or easy-to-climb patios. Always girls around my age, but no one had ever caught him on camera. Until now. Ramirez said they'd had a few blurry security photos, even a sketch once, but no name. He never broke in using force. No smashed windows, no fingerprints. Nothing solid to track. She said it was like he knew how to move through people's lives without leaving a trace. But this? My video? It was clear. Detailed. Unmistakable. Finally, they had a face. They asked if I'd be willing to let them install hidden surveillance in the house, full setup. Audio, better cameras, the works. They believed he'd come back, especially if he thought I hadn't noticed anything. The goal was to catch him in the act. I agreed. I didn't want revenge, I wanted it to stop. For me. For Maya. For whoever else came before. But when I got home, Jess was waiting on the porch. And she didn't look happy. Jess stood up the second she saw me walking up the porch with Nina. Her arms were crossed, her face pale. No makeup, no smile. Just this tired, almost angry expression. She didn't wait long before saying it. You went to the police. Not a question, just a flat statement. I told her yes. Of course I did. I wasn't going to wait around for that guy to crawl back into my bed. I expected her to be relieved, maybe even grateful. But instead, she looked nervous. Then she said, "You don't understand who he is." And that was the moment everything started tilting sideways again. I asked her what she meant, but she just motioned for us to go inside. Nina didn't want to, but I nodded. I needed to know. We followed her to the kitchen where Jess sat down and finally told us the full story. Back when Jess first moved into the house, almost 2 years ago, there was a neighbor across the alley. Lived alone in a garage-converted unit. Quiet guy, early 30s, no drama. He kept to himself. But over time, Jess noticed weird things. Open trash bins, footprints near her window, lights flickering. Then the notes started. Slipped under the front door in envelopes. Blank paper inside. Sometimes just a pressed flower. Sometimes nothing. At first, she thought it was romantic, maybe even charming. Then she caught him watching her from the alley one night. Not moving. Just staring. She reported it to the landlord, but the guy moved out before anyone could question him. Disappeared overnight. No name, no lease, just gone. Jess thought that was the end of it. Until Maya moved in a few months later. And the same things started happening again. Jess admitted she was scared. She didn't know what to do. So instead of warning Maya, instead of protecting her, she stayed quiet. Made up Eli to make the house feel full. To scare the man off, if he ever came back. But clearly, it hadn't worked. She said she was sorry. That she didn't know it had gotten this far. But that wasn't good enough. Not for me. Not after what I'd seen. What he had done. And then Nina asked a question that made the air in the room go still. Do you still have any of the notes? Jess didn't answer right away. She just stood up, went into her room, and came back with a shoebox. Inside? At least 20 envelopes. Most were empty. But one had something that made my skin crawl. A photo. Of my bed. From before I ever moved in. The moment I saw the photo, my whole body went cold. It was my room, same carpet, same window, same exact bed frame I was using. But the bedding was different. The lighting was soft, like early morning. It was taken from a high angle, like someone standing on the windowsill, or maybe leaning in from outside. I asked Jess where she got it. She looked down at her hands and said she found it in the mailbox a week before I moved in. She never told me. Didn't think it was worth scaring me over. That's when I realized, this wasn't random. This wasn't some creep who just happened to choose me. He'd been watching this house for years. He knew the layout, the windows, the schedules. He'd seen every girl who lived here. He chose us one by one. He chose me. The police returned later that evening with equipment. They installed 3 hidden cameras, one in the hallway, one near my door, and one aimed directly at the backyard, focused on my window. We didn't tell the others in the house, just Nina, Jess, and I knew. They warned us he might come back soon. Offenders like him, they follow routines. They get bold, comfortable. Especially when they think no one's watching. So we waited. That night, I tried to sleep, but every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I kept the lamp on and sat up in bed, fully dressed, heart racing at every passing hour. 1 a.m., nothing. 2 a.m., still quiet. 3:17 a.m., the motion alert went off. I opened the feed on my phone, and there he was. Climbing the fence. Hood up. Backpack slung over one shoulder. Same jeans. Same shoes. He moved quickly, efficiently. Straight to my window. I called the officer assigned to our case while watching him lift the frame with one hand, like he'd done it 100 times before. He slid it open and climbed in. And when he turned toward the camera, for just 1 second, he smiled. The smile wasn't like the one from before. This time, it was something darker. Like he knew. He paused just inside the room, like he was waiting for something. Listening. Sensing. I was downstairs with Nina and Jess, watching the camera feed in real time, phone trembling in my hand while I whispered updates to the officer who was already en route. We couldn't scream. Couldn't make a sound. The last thing we wanted was to scare him off before they got there. On the screen, I watched him walk over to my bed. He didn't crawl in this time. He just stood over it for a long moment. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, folded blanket. He laid it down on the floor, right beside my bed. He was making himself comfortable. The officer on the phone told me to stay put. Backup was minutes away. We watched in horror as the man knelt, laid his head on the blanket, and curled up like a child. Like this was a ritual. Like he belonged there. And then, red and blue lights flashed through the window. There was shouting, loud and clear. The man bolted upright, tried to leap back through the open window, but it was too late. Officers were already swarming the backyard. Another one burst in through the front, gun drawn, yelling for everyone to stay down. Seconds later, they had him cuffed on the floor of my bedroom. He didn't fight. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the bed. Like I wasn't even there. That was 2 weeks ago. Turns out his name is Aaron Price, 34, no criminal record, no job, no fixed address. But they found dozens of photos in his backpack. Printed, labeled, cataloged. Some of me. Some of Maya. Some of girls I didn't recognize. Some of Jess. Police think he'd been squatting in an abandoned garage 2 blocks away. Using alleyways and fences to move unseen. Always returning to this house. He'd never broken in through the front. Always the window. Always silent. They say we were lucky. I don't feel lucky. I feel watched. Every shadow outside my window makes me shiver. Every floorboard creak sets my heart pounding. I don't sleep with the lights off anymore. I don't open that window, not even a crack. Sometimes, I check the footage even though he's gone. Because part of me doesn't believe it's over. Jess moved out last week. Nina and I are leaving next month. None of us want to stay here anymore. As for Aaron, he's awaiting trial. Stalking, trespassing, unlawful surveillance, there's enough evidence to keep him locked up. But the question I keep asking myself, the one that won't let me rest, isn't how he got in. It's how long he was doing it before I noticed. And how many girls never did.